Hey everyone, it's Kenji. I'm gonna make some stuffing. Pretty classic stuffing. This is straight out of my book, The Food Lab, which has a lot of Thanksgiving stuff in it if that's what you're looking for. So onions, celery, sage, sausage. I'm gonna start actually by heating things up. Actually, I already started. I have some bread drying in the secret drying toaster oven in the closet there. And meanwhile, I'm gonna start making my sort of flavor base here. So I'm starting with some celery. And, you know, stuffing, dressing, whatever you want to call it. Some people say that it's not stuffing unless it's actually stuffed inside the bird. I think it's all considered, I call it stuffing. Growing up, you know, we didn't really bake our stuffing in the bird. We baked it separately in a casserole dish. And so some people would say that if you do that, you should call it dressing as opposed to stuffing. But I think since it all gets stuffed into your stomach anyway, you can call it stuffing. So a few sticks of celery, 4 ribs of celery. I'm going to split them lengthwise and then cut them down into dice like this. Of course, you know, the flavorings you use in your stuffing can all be pretty flexible, but I'm going pretty classic here. So celery, onion, and then I'm going to have some fresh sage, some parsley, some garlic, and some sausage. The sausage we have is this breakfast sausage, which is essentially a sage-flavored, you know, American-style sage-flavored pork sausage that's pretty high in fat. And so, yeah, any breakfast sausage will do. You want to buy it in bulk and raw for this recipe. So you don't want to get those little sort of brown and serve links, you know. You can also completely omit the sausage if you don't want any sausage flavor in your stuffing, or if you don't want to have meat in your stuffing. I've tried this also with, you know, like Impossible makes a sage-flavored vegan sausage that works just fine in this recipe. Also, or I guess they make a I don't know if they call it sage flavored, but they have a breakfast sausage or a bulk sausage that works fine. My onion, by the way, I am using my mathematically proven onion dicing method. So instead of aiming for the center and instead of aiming straight up and down, I aim for a point, like an imaginary point under the cutting board, about half of an onion radius down. So basically, like, you want to loosely cut radially. You know, so my knife is slightly angled in towards the center of the onion. I'm doing one single horizontal slice just to split up those end pieces, which can be larger if you don't do that horizontal slice. And that will give you the most even dice with the fewest number of strokes. Okay. Onion, celery. Let's see where our butter is. Okay. So, by the way, it's obviously not Thanksgiving yet. I don't know that Thanksgiving stuffing has to be a Thanksgiving food, but I'm not even going to be serving the stuffing today. What I'm going to be doing today is making the flavor base and then soaking the bread and getting it all into the casserole dish where I'm going to bake it. But I'm probably not going to bake it until, well, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. Depends. I haven't really thought about it yet, but my kids like stuffing. I like stuffing, and one of these dinners before Thanksgiving, we'll have stuffing. But all that is to say that you can do all this stuff ahead. It doesn't have to be done the day of Thanksgiving. So if you're the type of person who likes to plan ahead for Thanksgiving a little bit, likes to make sure that Thanksgiving Day is relaxed so that you can hang out with your family. You know, if you drink, you can have a few drinks on Thanksgiving Day, and you don't really have to worry too much about what's going on in the kitchen. You know, stuffing is one of the things that you can get done well ahead of time, and it's not going to suffer for it. In fact, it might even come out better for it, as the flavors tend to sort of meld together in the casserole dish. So what I do have going on in the oven right now that I started before I started the camera is I got a couple of pounds of bread, so about 2.5 pounds of bread, which is the equivalent of 2 standard loaves of bread. You know, in the U.S. at least, when you go to the supermarket and you buy a loaf of bread, like sliced sandwich bread, that is, it's going to weigh 20 ounces generally. So 2 of those is about 2.5 pounds. In grams, you know, in real measurements, that's 570 grams per loaf, so a total of 1,140 grams. You know, it's all approximate though. You can do a 1 kilogram loaf of bread and it'll work just fine. I like for my stuffing, you know, my recipe in my book calls for just sort of hearty American sandwich bread. So if you have something like an Oro wheat or an Arnold, you know, so you don't want to use Wonder Bread, something that's going to just turn to complete mush when you try and soak it. But a sort of heartier style American sandwich bread will work fine for this. That said, what I'm using today is a mix of a bunch of different breads that were all just sort of variously left over. So I have some sourdough in there. I think I have some English muffin in there. It's all just a mix of breads, and you know, you just want to make sure that you have about the right amount. Okay, so I got my sage sausage in here. I got some butter in here. This is a pastry cutter. It's used for, you know, cutting butter into flour when you're making pie crust, things like that. But I find that it makes a really good tool for breaking up sausage and ground meat inside a pan like this when you're trying to you know, when you're trying to say brown meat for a ragu bolognese, when you're browning sausage, if you're making a sausage ragu, if you're making chili and you're trying to mess up and you're trying to break up ground beef, a pastry cutter is a good job. Is a good tool for the job. Let's actually let that brown a little more, tighten a little bit up before we start cutting it. All right, so I got some fresh sage, picked it off the stems, tighten it up like that into a bundle, and we're just going to finely mince it. Potato masher is also a good tool if you want to break up that sausage. So the bread, by the way, I took off the crusts and then I cut it into cubes. I put it on sheet trays and then I put it in the toaster oven, 275 degrees. You can do it in the regular oven too, but 275 degrees with convection on. The idea is that you want to dry out the bread as much as possible. Stale bread works, you know, leaving it overnight and letting it stale. That works, but the real important step is not staling the bread necessarily. It's drying the bread. And if you've watched my videos, any video in which I stale bread, I talk about the difference between drying and staling. You know, so drying is the act of obviously of driving out the moisture from it, whereas staling is has to do more with starch retrogradation. So starch that is gelatinized during when you add water to it and bake it, as it cools down, it retrogrades and recrystallizes, and that's what makes bread stale, what makes bread sort of hard, you know, even when it's not dry. Drying, on the other hand, is the process of removing moisture, and that's what you want to do, because essentially what you want to make sure is that you can is that you have enough room in the bread to absorb all the flavors and absorb, in particular, the stock we're going to add to it. I'm using store-bought chicken stock. You can, of course, use homemade chicken stock or homemade turkey stock, or whatever kind of stock you want to, whatever you want to do. You know, I don't take stock in defining stock preferences. All right, so now we're starting to brown a little bit. Or I shouldn't say brown, but I should say firm up to the point that we can kind of do a little bit of chopping instead of just mushing. If you don't eat pork, by the way, turkey sausage also works just fine for this. I saw a thread on the Serious Eats subreddit where someone was asking whether, what you can do if you don't eat pork, and whether if you use turkey sausage you have to add extra fat or anything. Not really. In stuffing, you do want fat, and obviously there's a full stick of butter in here. And so a full stick of butter is a quarter pound, so about 125 grams, 120 grams, something like that. You do want enough fat in there that it's going to taste sort of rich, but you don't need to worry down to like the fat level of turkey versus pork in your sausage when you're making stuffing, Oh, by the way, those bread crusts. This is a trick I learned from Jim Leahy. If you want to make good breadcrumbs, take your bread crusts, soak them in water like this, and you want to let them like really soak, get completely wet, and then once they're soaked like this, I'm going to then later sort of squeeze out the excess moisture with my hands, kind of break them up a little bit, then place them on a sheet tray, and let them dry out in the oven, and then finally grind it up in the food processor, and that makes some really good breadcrumbs. And it's a good way to use up your crusts. Let's make this up just a little bit more. I'm looking basically for, I don't want it to be like a completely pulverized, powder of meat, but I don't want any big chunks. This pan, by the way, is made by Staub. It's a collaboration between Staub and my friend Deb Perlman from Smitten Kitchen, who does, I do a podcast with her called The Recipe with Kenji and Deb, which I lobbied to have called actually the Recipe with Deb and Kenji, but the powers that be said no, the other one sounds better for whatever reason. Anyhow, we do a podcast together. She makes this pan as a collaboration with Staub, and sent me one because we're friends. And I have been using it almost nonstop ever since. I find it sort of to be the ideal size for cooking it. I love it. All right. Onion, celery in. We're going to let that soften up. Oh, we'll put the sage in also. And then finally some garlic here. Some people tell you need to put the garlic in after onions because garlic cooks faster than onions, and you run the risk that it's going to burn. That could happen, but in my experience, what I find is that as long as there is moisture in the pan, that is, there's liquid coming out of the onions, liquid coming out of the celery. I'm going to take this real green stem out of there. That moisture is going to basically restrict the maximum temperature of the pan, so it's never going to really get above the boiling point of water. And because of that, your garlic is not really going to burn. So it's true that if you have onions or onions on their own versus garlic on their own, garlic is going to cook significantly faster because it's got more sugars in it. You're cutting the pieces finer, etc. But when they're mixed together, you don't need to worry about it too much. This is kind of old garlic, but it'll do. It'll do just fine. Give it a little smash. Smash-a-rooney. All right. Real simple recipe, right? My older sister, likes to put a lot of stuff in her stuffing. She likes stuffing her stuffing with stuff. And as George Carlin says, my stuff is stuff, but your shit is shit. I find I like my stuffing to be relatively simple. Not too many, like no mushrooms, no nuts, whatever. I mean, it's fine if you want to do that. If you invite me to your house and you throw mushrooms in your stuffing or you put nuts in your stuffing, I will gladly eat it without complaint, and I will probably find it delicious because I like stuffing of all kinds. But when I'm making it for myself or when I'm cooking for my family, I like to keep the flavors pretty classic and simple. So just sage, onions, garlic, sausage, lots of butter, stock, eggs, bread. All right, so our goal here is for that onion and celery to soften, but not brown. Oh, all right, so I got some of these, in my secret closet, I got some of these breadcrumbs already dried. The rest are in the oven drying out. Looking a little toasty. Actually, let me give those a quick flip. A little toastiness is okay. The goal again is to get them real nice and dry. So we don't want to feel any sort of mushiness in them, any softness. We want them to be, like biscuit texture. All right, so for my liquid mixture here, I'm going to start with 3 eggs. I like to think of my stuffing almost as as like a savory bread pudding, you know, so nice and custardy. Some people just like to use stock, you know. I like to add the eggs in there because I like giving that sort of more custard-like flavor to it. This parsley, by the way, all I did was I rinsed it. You know, I rinse my parsley when I buy it, so I rinsed it off in the sink, let it dry out, just so that there's no, you know, dirt or sand, anything stuck in there. Giving it a rough chop. Okay, and then I've got chicken broth. 4 cups of it. That is 1 quart, about 1 liter, you know. So I'm putting half of it in there with the eggs, along with the parsley. And I'm just going to whisk up those eggs. So the idea here is that, you know, the eggs, we're sort of going to temper them, you know. We don't want the eggs to go directly into the hot mixture and immediately scramble and cook. So we're going to thin them out in half of the liquid here, and then later on we're going to slowly add it to the pot so that the eggs don't scramble. In the same way that we would if we were making a custard base for like a creme brulee, something like that, you know. All right, that's looking pretty good. Tiny bit of browning on there, that's okay. All right, so the remaining stock, the other 2 cups, I'm going to add straight into here. To stop the cooking, deglaze the pan. And you know, my recipe, I think in the book calls for a Dutch oven where you then add the bread and mix everything together. I'm going to be baking directly in this pan. So what I'm going to do is I will actually just take I think I'll just do it like this. I'll take that whole mixture and I'll add it straight to the dried bread that I have over here. Shut off the heat. I'll stir this, and as I'm stirring this, I'm going to slowly fold in this other egg mixture. And the idea is we want to add it a little bit at a time, fold it in, make sure that it doesn't scramble. I think at this point, because we've added the bread, it's probably cool enough that it won't scramble, in fact, but we do want to make sure. Okay. All right. Let's grab the remaining bread. Okay, so let's fold this remaining bread in. And so what you find is that, you know, when you dry the bread out like that, you're basically making room in the bread so that it can then reabsorb moisture. And all that moisture, instead of being the water that you just evaporated out of there, is now going to be a real flavorful mix of, you know, stock with your aromatics, with your herbs, with that sage, with your stuffing, with your pork fat, everything that you threw in that pan with your butter. That's all going to get absorbed into the bread, and that's what makes your stuffing really tasty. And, you know, people will say, everyone puts out a piece this year, every publication puts out a piece this year about how Thanksgiving is all about the sides and nobody really likes turkey. I'm one of those people who actually really does like turkey, and I wonder why we don't eat it more often throughout the year. However, for me, stuffing is sort of the main goal of Thanksgiving. I love stuffing. It is, you know, kind of horrible for you in that it's like you're condensing, you know, you eat a little pile of stuffing, it's just like you've just had like 4 slices of bread, you know, but it tastes so good, right? All right, so that's what we're looking for. Everything's kind of soaked. There's no big dry chunks of bread left, all saturated. Okay. And then let's get it back into our wonderful Staub pan. I don't get any money for this, by the way. I don't take sponsorships or advertisements. So this is, when I say I love this pan, it's because I love this pan. My friend Deb, because it's her partnership with Staub, she does get money when you buy her pan. So if you want to support Deb, you should buy this amazing pan. It's super useful. All right. So there we are. That is our stuffing mixture. I'm going to taste it. Real good. You'll notice I didn't really add salt, and that's because the sausage mixture is going to be quite salty, and generally your stock is also going to have some amount of salt added to it. Even the low sodium stock has some salt added to it. So this is pretty well seasoned. I didn't have to add any salt to it. You can taste it beforehand if you're worried about it at all. I probably should have tasted it while it was still in the bowl before I got it into here, but tasting that piece now, it's right. The seasoning is right on. Okay, so this can now go in the once it cools down, and go in the fridge, and it'll stay there for well, up to a couple days before we bake it. So I will come back and I will show you what happens when we bake this. All right, so I will see you in about a day. In fact, almost exactly a day. All right, so I just had this in the fridge overnight, and we are ready to go straight into the oven. I have the oven preheated in my oven closet, my secret oven closet, 325 degrees. And it's just gonna go in there until it's browned on top. I don't remember exactly what the recipe says. I think probably like 45 minutes to an hour or so. But we're gonna get nice brown and bubbly. You're gonna see it's gonna puff up a little bit because those eggs are gonna souffle, and all the liquid in there is gonna start to evaporate and turn into steam. So it'll puff up a little bit. The tops will get nice and brown and crusty, and we'll be ready to serve. All right, I will see you when that's ready. So I'll be back in about 45 minutes. All right, so where are we at? I know where we're at because I peeked and checked before. Whew, look at that. How's that look? Here, let me get a towel here. All right, so there we are. Classic sage sausage stuffing, or dressing, or whatever the heck you want to call it for your holiday table. Let me take out a bite. Now, like I said, this gets the kind of savory bread pudding texture, so I like it really nice and moist on the inside. Look at that. Ooh, with some crispy edges, crispy tops. Let me grab some of those crispy edges here. Good stuff. Good stuffing. I'm real hot. All right, so if you want the recipe, I'll leave a link for it below. You can find it free online on SeriousEats.com, or if you want all the recipes, you can get it in my book, The Food Lab, which, by the way, just sold its millionth copy. So you could be the millionth and first if you order it right now. If you want these books, by the way, for the holidays, signed and personalized, right now, this video is coming out in November of 2024. So if you want it by the holidays, December of 2024, order by November 30th, and you can get a copy of it. If you're watching this video at a later time, you can order a signed copy anyway. Booklarder.com, signed and personalized copies shipped anywhere in the world. All right. Real good. All right. Guys, gals, non-binary pals, I hope you enjoy your holidays, and I hope you enjoy your stuffing. I hope you enjoy stuffing yourself with your stuffing. And I will see you later. Bye-bye.